So the aim of this workshop is just to give you a tool to help you understand yourself, your family, your friends, the children, the young people you live and work with a bit better. It's not intended to put a label on anybody, to be rigid, or to try and put anybody in a box. It is just a tool. And we all know how important diversity awareness is. Millions of pounds are poured into training on issues of age, gender, ethnicity and religion every year. Yet it seems with all this talk about diversity, one important area is overlooked, and that's differences in personality. And I think this causes as much misunderstanding and results in as many difficult and broken relationships as the other areas, which probably receive a bit more attention. So, Knowing Me, Knowing You is part one of a 3-part programme, which covers personality, which is what we're doing in this workshop, who am I, purpose, where am I going, and passion, how will I get there. And this fits well into the message version of Galatians 6, 4 and 5, which says, make a careful exploration of who you are, the work you have been given, be the creative best you can. And the first part is personality, second part is purpose, third part is passion. Today's workshop just covers part one, but I do have a handout entitled Adam's Story, which shows how the 3-part programme was used with one looked after child with very challenging behaviours. And if you do want a copy of that or of any of the handouts from today, just drop me an email. Okay, and I can let you have those to look at. So whether you're a parent, a youth leader, a children's worker, a teacher, or live and work with children in any capacity, we all know how different they are. Some we find it easy to relate to, others are much harder, and there will be those, I think, that all of us would admit to having a bit of a personality clash with, or we find them incredibly challenging. And that is because we're all different, and this has a real impact on our relationships, our families, our work, and our social lives. And I think to put it into a very sort of concise start, some of us are more introverted and others are more extroverted. And we're just going to look at a little clip from the film Up, which illustrates this really well. And I'm sure you'll see children and young people you know in each of these two on this film. Adventures.
Exclusive club. Only explorers get in here. Not just any kid off the street with a helmet and a pair of goggles. Do you think you got what it takes? Well, do you? Yeah. All right, you're in. Welcome aboard. What's wrong? Can't you talk? Hey, I don't bite. You and me, we're in a club now. I saw where your balloon went. Come on, let's go get it. My name's Ellie. There it is. Well, go ahead. Go on. to let you see something I have never shown to another human being. Ever in my life. You will have to swear you will not tell anyone. Cross your heart. Do it. My adventure book. You know him. Charles Muntz, explorer. When I get big, I'm going where he's going. South America. It's like America, but south. Wanna know where I'm gonna live? Paradise Falls, a land lost in time. I ripped this right out of a library book. I'm gonna move my clubhouse there and park it right next to the falls. Who knows what lives up there? And once I get there, well, I'm saving these pages for all the adventures I'm gonna have. Only, I just don't know how I'm gonna get to Paradise Falls. That's it! You can take us there in a blimp. Swear you'll take us. Cross your heart. Cross it? Cross your heart. Good, you promised. No backing out. Well, see you tomorrow, kid. Bye. Adventuring up there. You know, you don't talk very much. I like you. Wow.
I think that just illustrates quite well the different personalities, different motivations and different priorities we've got, and the fact that we can react very differently to the same events and experiences. We're going to look a bit about personality profiles. They're not new. Hippocrates in 460 BC divided his patients as a doctor into 4 different categories: choleric, sanguine, phlegmatic and melancholy. And that was the start of understanding that we had different personalities. And as you can see, as it went through, different things were developed. And in 1958, Mrs. Myers and Mrs. Briggs developed the MBTI, which is still probably the most used profile today. There's also about 300 others. Some of these are the most popular. Yeah. There's so many of them. And I think what happens is if people are trained in Myers-Briggs, or they're trained in DISC, or they're trained in Belbin, they tell you that one's the best. And, you know, I actually think they're all the same. It's like a bit like bars of chocolate. I like Cadbury's Dairy Milk. You like maybe Galaxy, somebody else likes Aero. They're all bars of chocolate with a few tweaks and packaged a bit differently. And whether you use numbers, letters, colours, or whatever, I think it's basically a tool to help us understand ourselves and other people a little bit better. I use the Path Elements profile because it uses the elements in their natural form as a way of helping us understand our personalities. And I find I can use it with, I use it all the time with a lot of the challenging and vulnerable young people. I use it in schools with teachers, I use it in churches with leadership teams, and I use it in business as well. And it works with everybody. So any child, you know, I've done it with a year 6 in primary school and upwards, and it works really well. So Einstein once said, look deep into nature and you will understand everything better. And I think that includes ourselves as well and our personalities. So just quickly, if we think of the elements of earth, fire, wind and water in their natural format, what sort of words come to mind if I say earth? Anybody shout out if they want to?
Like growth?
Yeah, growth, solid, grounded, creative. And those are the sort of words that we'd use to describe an earth type personality. We also might say spinning, because we're all sitting here right now and the earth is spinning round at, I don't know, is it 1,000 miles an hour or something? We're not aware of it, but that happens. And I think with earth personalities, you often don't see a lot, but it's all going on inside. I think it's that sort of way that we can use the elements to help us understand our personalities a little bit more. So with earth, if I plant carrots, I'm going to get carrots. So it's a predictable personality type. It's also, I'm not going to get carrots tomorrow morning, much as I'd like it. Everything's going on underneath. And then eventually something will come up after a while that's near perfect. And the earth is full of rich resources, gold, oil, silver, coal, you mention it. But it's not just there lying on the top. We need specialist equipment to sort of mine down for it, if you like. And sometimes it's a bit like that with getting into understanding the earth personality, because it's not all out there.
Okay.
If I say wind, what words come to mind?
Power.
Yes, can be very powerful, yeah.
And I was going to say unpredictable.
Unpredictable, yeah.
Unseen.
Unseen. It's also constantly moving. You know, it's definitely all moving all the time, never still. And we can think of lots of other things as well. If we said water, what words would come to mind?
Cleansing.
Cleansing, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Also often quite calm on the surface, but sometimes lots going on underneath. We often say of the water personality that they're, you know, as water goes to both sides of the bath, the lake or the ocean, water personality sometimes can see both sides of every argument. So some people say you're very indecisive, but actually they can see both sides and find it sometimes difficult to come down on one side or the other, or make a choice. Would you like a cup of tea or a cup of coffee? No, I had tea this morning and I'm having coffee later. Now, which one? You know, that type of, yeah. And fire. If I say fire, what comes to mind?
Heat.
Heat, yeah. Blazing.
Consuming.
It can be consuming, yes. Blaze is a trail, but can be warming and comforting and helps us, you know, with our food and cooking our food and things like that. Today we're looking at the elements in their natural format. So it's nothing to do with star signs or horoscopes, but just something to help us understand ourselves and others better. So we'd say, as with all profiles, we've all got 4 of the elements, but the intensity of which we present with the elements of one or another depends on the score. So it's possible to do an online profile, and the scores go from 10 to 90. Now, I'm quite high wind, but I've actually got a score of 10 for earth, which means my detail, my organisation, my planning, my routine are, you know, non-existent, except I have to plan sessions every day. I have to be prepared for meetings. I have to write my notes up every session. And I find it torturous, but I have to do it. I can't say, oh, I'm a windy personality, therefore, you know, I don't have to do any of that. I do. I jolly well have to knuckle down, but I understand why I don't enjoy it, why it takes me quite a long time, and why I avoid it at all costs. But it does mean I delegate things like my accounts. I would never attempt to do those. Everything goes in a bag and, you know, give it to somebody else to do. So it's understanding in that level as well. So as well as strengths, each element has challenges, as in the natural world. So we've got earthquakes, floods, destructive fires, hurricanes. And in a similar way, under pressure and stress, the challenges of our elements will become more pronounced and our strengths will become less evident. And when I say ours, I'm obviously talking about the children and the young people that you work with as well. And we'll look at some charts that give us the differences, and sometimes it's a good way of understanding how much stress we or they are under as we look at which column, if you like, we're spending more time in. So the earth personality is the let's think it through. Accurate with details, predictable, reserved, organised, conscientious, cautious, prepared, analytical, focused, follows the rules, factual, high standards, and works well alone. And really important, I want my accountant to be an earth. I want my GP or my surgeon to be an earth. I need them to be that. you know, because otherwise, yeah, it's going to be very good. Under pressure, though, Earth personalities can become picky, a bit unexciting, distant, a bit inflexible, tending towards being perfectionist, suspicious, may lack confidence, can be a bit obsessive, emotionless, a bit pessimistic, or a bit antisocial. So that's the thinkers. Let's think it through. The fire is the personality, let's get it done. They are probably the more natural leaders, although leaders can come from any element, but they're bold, assertive, risk-taking, daring, results-orientated, visionaries, direct, confident, decisive, initiating, but confronting, loves a challenge and high energy. And when I was listening to Mark Russell from the Children's Society earlier, I thought he's probably quite high fire, which is why he's getting as much as he can done. And he's obviously living in a lot, mostly in his strengths. So, you know, we can't all be like that, but you know, perhaps that's a good example. We might perhaps, on the other hand, think of somebody like Donald Trump, who we might say would be impulsive, controlling, reckless, defiant, self-absorbed, poor listener, opinionated, win at all costs, unapproachable, argumentative, and overpowering. What happens in reality is that, you know, whichever one of these, you know, is our main element, we will hopefully be living in most of these, but there will at times be some of these that we display as well. Win's the element that says, let's have fun. They're optimistic, charming, expressive, spontaneous, talkative, enthusiastic. They're curious. So if they're sitting opposite somebody on a train, their natural reaction will be to start up a conversation. You know, who are you? Where have you been? Where are you going? You know, this is who I am. Well, now, if they are sitting opposite a high Earth, that person will immediately think their personal space is being invaded, and the person sitting opposite them is being very nosy and probably rude. Not right, not wrong, just different. They're amusing, they live in the now, very flexible, love change, they're passionate and trusting. But they can be unrealistic, manipulative, impulsive, loud, nosy, disorganized, unfocused, emotional, and a bit gullible. And finally, we've got water, which is the element that says, let's take it easy. They're team orientated, they're easygoing, they're relaxed, quiet, relational, kind, and considerate. Unlike fires who wanted to change the world and probably yesterday, they easily accept life as it is. They don't always have big goals, but they want to be supportive. They don't want an upfront role. They want to cooperate. They're patient, loyal, good listeners, and they're sensitive. But on the other hand, they can be a bit dependent, a bit passive, a bit timid, maybe come over as a bit needy. They may lack goals, they can be a bit unassertive, and sometimes a bit thin-skinned. And what we have with lists like this is, you know, somebody who is perhaps, let me say, easygoing. The opposite element, which would be fire, might see them as complacent because they're not coming down on one side or the other. They're not making a decision, you know, and so other people might say to us, oh yeah, you're you know, presenting with some of these. Some of it may be true, we may be living in a challenge, but it may be that the other person sees us from their very different elemental perspective. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, any comments so far? Anything you want to add or say? Or
I did just wonder whether these things change. I mean, I were a very quiet, introverted kind of child, shy. I went to work behind a bar in my early 20s, and that changed. Well, that brought something out in me, and whether it can change as well due to what circumstances we find ourselves in.
It's a really interesting question. It was one that was answered this morning.
Sorry.
And we will, there is a slide just towards the end, but I think it falls into two categories. Some people say you're not, some people say you're not born with your personality, it changes. I tend to go on the side that we're probably born with our personalities. I've got 7 grandchildren, and I think I can tell you pretty well what they're likely to be. You know, little Oisin will sit there at 5 years old with his cars, and he will line them up in a straight line, colour coordinated. Now, you know, that child is not high wind. You know, he is earth, detailed, organised. I have another granddaughter who, as soon as she arrives, gets every basket of toys there is, throws them into the middle of the room, rummages around in a bit, and then 2 minutes later says, I'm bored, what can we do now? She's likely to be wind. But I think what it's really important to bear in mind is learned behaviour. Now, I'm high wind, but I was born in a Welsh Reformed Calvinist family that was very high earth with some water, and sticking to the rules and making sure, you know, other people thought well of you was very important. My windy personality didn't fit in very well there, and there was conflict. But I did all I could to rein my personality in to fit in. And a lot of the children we work with will have had to have used adaptive behaviour to fit in. Now, obviously, we haven't got time now, but it's often that our personality is there. But we have all 4, you see, we all have all 4. And it may be that, you know, what we are naturally was frowned upon. I tell a story of, I was at a business event doing a workshop like this, and one of the managers of the team, who was a very, you know, smartly dressed, I think most of her team were terrified of her, very high fire. I said to the team at the end, what was your biggest learning from doing this personality information? And I saw this woman who was, you know, a real fire. I thought I saw her bottom lip quiver. And I said, do you want to start and tell us? She said, I know I'm high fire, but I've realised I've spent the last 7 years trying to make my water son a fire like me. And so while we had probably a very natural, sensitive, caring little boy, he'd probably realised that wasn't okay. And he needed to be, and you can imagine the emotional energy he was spending to try and be like this sort of really hard, focused woman as his mother was. So I think that would be the answer to, and obviously it will be different for everybody. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. If on an online, all 4s are quite close together in the mid-range, we tend to think of somebody being a fusion. They're not high on anything, but all their scores come more or less the same. And it can indicate a good all-rounder, but there's other explanations too, which we haven't got time to go in today. But you can get 17 different options. So if on the score, your score is 55 or over, and you've only got one element 55 or over, you will be a double earth. Now, I've been married for over 40 years to a double earth. But if there were 2 elements over 55, it would be an earth fire, earth water, earth wind, and the higher up the score you go, then the more you will show the characteristics of that element. So you get doubles of everything, and that's how it works. For children, these are probably slightly more child-friendly phrases. You know, winds love fun, want company, show off, talk constantly, very imaginative, very short interest span, easily distracted. And when they're high on the scale, we might even begin to label them, you know, whatever. Fires are adventurous, they take risks, competitive, strong-willed, and we don't always want to beat that out of them, although that can be our tendency, because we can see some of their characteristics as behavioural issues if they are opposite to what feels natural to us, which is why it's quite an interesting exercise. Water's easygoing, undemanding, quietly stubborn, can be selfish, doesn't like conflict. And the earth likes routine, can be moody, neat and organised. And I'm sure you can see particular people that you know and children that would fit into that. We're just going to watch a short video clip which illustrates with some exaggeration how each personality type may respond to exactly the same situation. So it's in Hungarian with subtitles, but don't let that worry you. Zach will walk across the stage and sit in a chair which has an upturned tack on it. Now, this clip uses the old Hippocrates words for the personality types, but in order, he'll act as a wind, a fire, an earth, and a water. Okay, so we're talking high of each of those. And it's just to illustrate how exactly the same situation can be perceived by each of the personality types.
First, Zach will be a sanguine character.
Először Zach egy szangvinikus lesz.
Wind.
Jó napot kívánok! Milyen csodálatos nap van ma. Annyira örülök, hogy élek. Itt virágok vannak, kedves emberek. Örülök, hogy itt lehetek. Valaki tett a székemre egy nagy szöget. Ki volt ez? Ez óriási. Ez egy nagyon jó trükk. Köszönöm szépen, hogy ennyire fellelkesedtétek a napomat. Örülök, hogy itt vagyok.
This is a fire.
Ki csinálta ezt? Ó, mi a vicc? Ki csinálta ezt? Hogyha én nem tudom meg, hogy ki csinálta ezt, akkor mindenki meg fog halni.
Now he's going to be an earth.
Az élet az olyan, mint egy rajzszög. Rövid, kemény és nagyon-nagyon fáj.
Now he's going to be a water. You can see that's slightly exaggerated, but exactly the same situation perceived in totally different ways. So fires are motivated by results and control, and they thrive on challenge and confrontation. So if you're a water and you are working with a fire child or young person, you're going to find them quite difficult. Earths are motivated by detail and routine and thrive on order and structure. So anything out of the ordinary, change, they will find difficult. Waters are motivated by stability and compassion, and they thrive on harmony and calm. So when things get a little bit edgy, they find that hard. And winds are motivated by variety and attention and thrive on flexibility and change. So in a shortened version, fires, do it my way. Earths, do it the right way. Waters, do it the peaceful way. And winds, do it the fun way. And ideally, any team is made up of a combination of the different elements, because that makes for balance. We can tend to go towards people who are like us, I was once in a very windy team where there was one earth and everybody else was windy. And it was wonderful. We got together every 6 weeks for a meeting. It was like a party, you know, we'll do this and we'll do this and we'll do this. It was fantastic. Nobody said, and who's doing it? When will it be done by? How much money have we got? And we had real implications because it was a really unbalanced team. Great fun, but actually wasn't viable as a, you know, as an ongoing entity. So fires and winds would be like Ellie on the clip. Outward looking generalists initiate things and move quickly. So great starters, not always such good finishers. Earths and waters tend to be more introverted. They specialize, they maintain things, and they move more slowly. Fires and earths, results and tasks are really important to them, whereas winds and waters are more relational and more people orientated. So if I have a crisis, I would always ring a wind water friend to give me some TLC, and she'd drop everything immediately and come. Whereas a fire earth friend might look in the diary and say, I can give you 10 minutes a week next Friday, as long as you don't go over, you know, that type of thing. So fires and waters tend to be opposites: decisive, indecisive, organised, disorganised, hates change, loves change. And you can see sometimes we go around like that. It is possible to have that type of personality combination, but we're trying to put a day's workshop into 55 minutes, so we can't go into it all, but it gives you a bit of an overview. Any questions on that? Okay. So yes, again, the difference, and do let me know if you want any handouts from this. The fires and winds are the extroverts, and you can see how the introverts are opposite. So they focus outwardly rather than inwardly, the opposite. Fires and winds do it first, think about it later. Earths and waters think and consider before doing. They think out loud, bounce ideas off other people and discuss their experiences. Introverts process internally and probably on their own. They understand their world through direct experience of it. The introverts keeps thoughts to themselves. And so you can see how much difference there is, and where conflict and misunderstanding can easily come up, whether that's in a, you know, a personal relationship, whether it's within a family, work team, or with the children that you work with. And they enjoy having variety and lots to do. Earths and waters find themselves easily overloaded, and they need significant times to rest and take time out, whereas they need little time alone and may even avoid it. One thing to bear in mind is our communication. If we know that we're talking to an earth or a fire or a wind or a water, using the words which link to their element can mean we have more success in our conversation. So if in my dreams I'm thinking of a weekend away and I find something that's great fun and I want to sell it to Alan, I'm not going to tell him it's fun, exciting, it's change, there's variety. Yeah. I'm not going to use that. I'm going to say, I've done my research and all the reviews are very solid, and I'm going to sell the holiday to him in a way that will appeal to him. Now, is that manipulative? I'm a bit windy, you know, but I think as a principle, it is really good to think about what elements the young people, the children, the people that we're working with are. You know, I think it's quite easy to see whether they're an Ellie or a Carl. And then, you know, are they fast moving, fast talking, or are they slower, more thoughtful? And then if they're fires, they'll be more controlling, wanting to do things their way. Winds will be more wanting to please because they want to be popular. Earths will be very much wanting to finish the task. Waters will be much more flexible in terms of, you know, just being compliant. So I think there are ways of indicators as to which element people might be. And again, not right, not wrong, just different. Remember, and I think this is really important to remember in our society where at schools, they want everybody to be the same, everybody to fit in the same box, which is really, really difficult for young people. And if you've got time and you haven't seen it, the School of Animals is worth looking at on the YouTube, because it really indicates how, you know, if you have a school of animals and one of the tasks is tree climbing, you know, the fish isn't going to get very far and the squirrel will get to the top. And that's what we're doing with some of our kids today. You've all got to be good at this and tick the box for this. But in terms of our youth work, you know, what variety is there to take in the needs of sometimes very vulnerable and challenging young people who may have very, very different ways of looking at the world. So a fire will find joy in having control, risk, challenge, and big goals. Whereas for water, oh, challenge, risk, no, don't make me do anything at the front. Don't make me have a challenge where I might fail. Earths will enjoy having time to do things alone, making sure everything's right and sorting out all the details. Whereas a winds, that would be really stressful and boring. Because winds thrive on variety and changes in plans or no plans, just going with the flow makes them feel alive and excited, while earths find this really, really stressful and difficult. And a water needs downtime to rest and do nothing, whereas fires will see this as lazy and being weak. So it's just trying to adapt to each other. And anger styles. Fires are quick to get angry. You think if you light a match, you can have a whole house on fire in minutes. That's the anger style. Light the match, whew, I'm off. But then it's usually short-lived and forgotten. But the problem is the other elements who may have watched this will be deeply hurt by it, shocked by it, and the earths particularly may never forgive them for that outburst. The fires have forgotten all about it and moved on to the next thing because, you know, life's full of goals, yeah. Earths tend to bury their anger. They're not confrontational, they're not given to drama, they try to keep things grounded, but perhaps after years of suppressing it and things building up, sometimes without warning, there could be an earthquake. And after that, life may never be the same again. Waters dislike confrontation, but when they feel angry, they do what water does under pressure, either boil or freeze. And they can steam, scald, and disappear. You know, you have relationships where a wife just suddenly disappears and the husband says, I didn't know anything was wrong. And for years she's been saying this, but not in a very assertive way. He thought, she's gone. Or it can be turning to ice, as in skating with it, or it can be completely boiling over. Winds, lovely, you know, just forget winds like things in motion. So they yell, they whine, they howl, they toss things in the air, and their anger can come out of nowhere. Sometimes it's just best to get out of the way so things are blown over, because again, it'll be short-lived and quickly forgotten. So again, we've got very different anger styles, and we would see that anger in very different ways. And it's easy, you know, helpful to remember it with the young people that we're working with as well. We've all got emotional needs. Basically, earths need space, they need silence, they need support when they're down, and they need understanding, but they don't want to be fixed. Okay, and they don't necessarily want to tell you what's going on, but they want you to understand things ain't good at the moment, and you know, my pessimism is a bit high, and those who are in a relationship with an earth would do well to learn how to read the subtle clues they give out, and quiet sensitivity can be a really good way of helping them you know, to manage whatever they're finding difficult. And the emotional needs of fire are accomplishment, a sense of control. They want support and loyalty and credit for their work. So they want to get things done. They have a great need to change things, including righting what they perceive to be wrongs. They want to finish what they're doing. And again, if you're trying to hurry a fire up when the next task needs to be moved on to, that can be difficult. And this one's important. When life feels out of control, a fire will try to control others even more. And a tip, never tell a fire what to do, always give them options. So they feel that they're having some choice, even if the other option actually isn't a choice. You know, I had a fire child, and you'll do this or you'll die, you know, type of, but at least they, you know, feel they have some choice. And the best compliment you can give a fire is to show them appreciation for the work that they've done. And the emotional needs of a wind, they want attention, they want approval, they want acceptance, and they want affection. They love and crave attention. So notice them if they don't get it, they might look at negative ways to find your attention. They need to be liked and feel connected. So sometimes they need to be liked by everybody, can lead them to sort of remaking their personality to fit in with the group that they're in. And affection is one of the most important emotional gifts you can give a wind. Touch is really important to them. So they're the ones that are finding no hugs at the moment really difficult, because they will be the touchy-feely personalities. And the emotional needs of water. They want to be felt feelings of worth. They need peace and quiet. They want to be respected for who they are. Water's best attributes are being, not doing. You often hear, she's a really nice person, he's a really nice guy. Nobody ever says anything negative about them. And they do have wonderful ideas if people would just listen. But sometimes they need to be drawn out because they don't put themselves at the fore. They get stressed when there's no peace. And they're drained by too. They enjoy being with people because they're relational, but they do need downtime as well. And they often need more rest and sleep than the other personality types. So under pressure and stress, we revert to our challenges. So fires become more impulsive, controlling, risk-taking, reckless, defiant, and confronting. So a young person displaying those behaviours, rather than looking at the behaviours, we might be wanting to consider what in their life is causing them this stress. Has some early trauma been triggered, or is it something that's going on right now for them? Has somebody said something that's really just triggered, you know, a memory or something from the past? Earths become distant, inflexible, suspicious, unresponsive, and pessimistic. Waters become more passive, stubborn, closed-mouthed, complacent and dependent. And winds become more manipulative, emotional, hyper, unfocused and loud. But these are all indicators. We often say a child's behaviours are their language. And if this is the language they're using, what are they trying to tell us? And in conclusion, what we've said is, do our personalities change over time? So we need to consider the effects of learned behaviour, and particularly for those children and young people who've had to use adaptive behaviours to survive, who may still be using them. And I think as we come out of lockdown, you know, how much emotional energy has each of those young people had to use to survive in the lockdown or the particular situation that they've been in? Have, you know, parents or carers been particularly afraid? So is fear their main, you know, driving force at the moment? So I think we do need a lot of wisdom as we, you know, try and relate to them after what they've been through this year. There is a book called The Treasure Tree, which it's not based on the 4 elements. I think they don't mention a particular personality type, but I think it was written by the team that's are behind the DISC profile. But it explains to children the 4 different personality types, using a lion, which would be fire, the beaver for water, the retriever for earth, and the otter for wind. And it really works well. I have run in schools and churches and other places. You know, I've run a workshop similar to this to the parents and the carers, and somebody else has run a session in a big hall for the children with lots of different activities around the treasure tree, and it's been great fun. And then everybody can go back, whether it's school or home, and discuss, oh, so you're the fire, you're the water, oh, so you like this, you're more like, and it really does work incredibly well. So that book is you know, particularly helpful. Okay. And here, if you are working with an earth, remember how important details are to them. If you're working with the water, remember they're very sensitive, and kindness and support are really important to them. If they're a wind, give them the attention they're needing, and if they're fires, give them options. However, if you are an earth, just loosen up. Don't be quite so uptight about everything. You know, lean into some of those other elements that you've got. You can do it. I can do it with my earth. And if you're water, toughen up. The world's not against you. Don't be quite so sensitive. And, you know, again, use some of the other elemental characteristics that you have got there. If you're a wind, button up. Not everybody wants to hear every bit of your life or detail of your day. And if you're a fire, listen up. Other people have got something really, really important to say if you'll just listen to them. And as the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland said, I'm not crazy. My reality is just different to yours. Now, I've got one other clip I can show you, which I think shows what happens when a child isn't put in a box, and perhaps what could have happened if they were, if we don't understand their personalities. But just before we do that, has anybody got any questions, any comments, anything you'd like to ask or say?
I think for me, one of the things that it's made me think about again, I did do a course to train, I trained to be an adult teacher, so training the trainers, it was course. And one of the things, and then I trained at theological college, but we had to look at people's learning styles. And there was traits in them that seemed to make me think about, that's a consideration in all those elements, isn't it? Because it can be different. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. And it does relate to, I mean, you can use it to everything. That would be definitely important. The 5 love languages, if you've come across that. I mean, it's something that has to be taken into account with advertising.
Yeah.
You know, if you're in marketing, all those different, it actually impacts every area of our life. Because today we want everybody in a box because that makes it easier. And actually, you know, we do it at our peril because we're all very, very unique individuals. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that sometimes church tries to fit us more into one model than another?
Yeah, and there's some interesting things in terms of,
And I mean that in brackets, church, do you know what I mean?
yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's true of any organisation that has a particular, but I think you would see, and there's some studies being done on this, that earth, fire, winds and waters would have a very different concept of God. They would have a very different concept of judgment. They would have a very different concept of grace. And each of them would pick out the verses that, you know, managed to prove their particular theological stance. But really interesting that it will often, or I would say usually, go back to personality. And you will read things depending on what your personality type is. And there's a whole load, you know, you could come back to doing a study on the personality types of the different biblical characters. You know, it's a fascinating one to do.
I think I was thinking of kind of different kinds of churches, because I'm like a box of chocolate. I'm a box of chocolates Christian. I like to have different worship styles and stuff sometimes. But it seems that there were some churches who want, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it seems that there were some that have a model of wanting more control over people, more one of the, is it the fire that likes control or whatever? I can't remember now.
Yeah.
I was trying to say, And so sometimes that has damaged people, hasn't it? Whereas some people quite like that.
Yes, yeah. And again, that will come down very much to their personalities. Yeah, yeah. Has anybody else got anything, or shall I just do this quick clip?
I just want to say thank you for this. When I looked at the options, I was really intrigued by this. I've just been on part-time furlough, so I'm going to be going back into a high school on Monday.
Oh,
and
yeah.
just to have this knowledge now in the back of my mind, and to, you know, emotions are going to be really high, and personalities that
They
maybe
really are.
weren't there before lockdown are there now. And to get some understanding behind that is really, really helpful. So thank you.
Thank you. In my ideal world, I would have this in every single school. It would transform. What I'm going to do, and do email me, I'll put the email address up in a minute. Just quickly, I'm just going to show this. Please don't get hung up on the ADHD reference. That's not why I'm showing it, and whatever your views might be on it. It just happens to be a comment that's made, but I think the rest of it is really, you know, quite helpful. So it features Sir Ken Robinson. If you haven't watched his TED talk on Do Schools Kill Creativity, it's definitely a must watch. It's the biggest TED talk that's you know, been watched. And he's telling the story of the famous choreographer Gillian Lynne, who sadly died in 2018, and Sir Ken passed away last August. But it's a powerful reminder not to label the children we live and work with, but to understand their personalities and strengths and work with these. It's only 1.5 minutes, so I think we'll get it time to do it.
She's a choreographer and everybody knows her work. She did Cats. Gillian Lynne. Anyway, Jill and I had lunch one day. I said, how'd you get to be a dancer? And she said it was interesting. When she was at school, she was really hopeless. And the school in the 30s wrote to her parents and said, we think Gillian has a learning disorder. She couldn't concentrate, she was fidgeting. I think now they'd say she had ADHD. But this was the 1930s and ADHD hadn't been invented, you know, at this point, so it wasn't an available condition. People weren't aware they could have that. Anyway, she went to see this specialist. So this oak panelled room, and she was there with her mother, and she was led and sat on this chair at the end, and she sat on her hands for 20 minutes while this man talked to her mother about all the problems Gillian was having at school. And at the end of it, because she was disturbing people, her homework was always late and so on, little kid of 8, in the end, the doctor went and sat next to Gillian and said, Gillian, I've listened to all these things that your mother's told me. I need to speak to her privately. So he said, wait here, we'll be back. We won't be very long. And they went and left her. But as they went out the room, he turned on the radio that was sitting on his desk. And when they got out the room, he said to her mother, just stand and watch her. And the minute they left the room, she said she was on her feet, moving to the music. And they watched for a few minutes, and he turned to her mother, and he said, you know, Mrs. Lynne, Gillian isn't sick. She's a dancer. Take her to a dance school. I said, what happened? He said, she did. I can't tell you how wonderful it was. We walked in this room, and it was full of people like me. People who couldn't sit still. People who had to move to think. Who had to move to think. She's been responsible for some of the most successful musical theatre productions in history. She's given pleasure to millions, and she's a multi-millionaire. Somebody else might have put her on medication and told her to calm down.
Brilliant. Oh, that's
Brilliant.
brilliant.
That was worth, you know, oh, sorry, there you are. So if you've anything you want, further information or details of handouts or the story of the other bits of the programme, that's my email address, and do feel free to get in touch. But thank you for
Thank you.
joining, and all the best next week with school or whatever else you're going back to.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I think they're going to move us in just a minute. If anybody's got anything else they want to add, we've got a minute, I think.
Ruth, is there any way we can find out more about the In Your Element?
Yes, there is a book. Oh, I'm trying to find it because I waved it about this morning. There's a book called The 4 Elements of Success.
Okay.
By Laurie Beth Jones, and I went over to Los Angeles in 2005 and trained with her, and I've been using it ever since. But that book will give you more information. It's called The 4 Elements of Success, and it's Laurie Beth Jones. She's done a lot of interesting stuff. Jesus CEO, Jesus in Blue Jeans. I love her. I've had a lot to do with her. I think some Christians have a bit of a problem with her sometimes. There's somebody that always comes up on the top because they don't like her. But very good stuff. But if you need any more, let me know.
Thanks. Susan.
Thank you ever so much. That's been fantastic.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.